So, with James Gunn Superman on the horizon, it's got a lot more people interested in the character. And with more Superman fans, of course, comes more controversial takes about Superman. I put out a post on my Twitter and my Blue Sky, as well as my members-only Discord server, for all of your spiciest opinions all about the Man of Steel himself. Superman is a beacon of kindness and hope, so surely his fan base can handle some differing opinions from time to time. Starting with... Okay, yeah, this is getting a little bit heated. I think I'm gonna tap out. This video is brought to you by Raycon. Raycon is known for their earbuds with sound quality that rivals the big audio brands and all of the features, but for a fraction of the cost. Their everyday earbuds have multi-point connectivity, wireless charging, and active noise cancellation with an awareness mode, plus water resistance, quick charge, and an insane 32 hours of battery life. That's like 8 Snyder cuts. They come in a huge variety of colors and protective cases, like this really cool galaxy one and these purple ones that I got for Olivia. And that customization helps you stand apart and feel special when everyone else is just going for the plain black or white. I use my Raycons all the time for listening to music or podcasts when I'm out for a walk or doing chores around the house. One thing that I do that's kind of crazy, but it's really helped my process for making videos, is I take my scripts and then I put them into this like really just terrible like text to speech thing, and I turn that into an MP3 file, and so then I listen to it and pretend it's a podcast with to help me go over it while I do other stuff. Since, as always, I know 90% of you are just listening to this while you play Fortnite. Not really about Raycon specifically, but you know, I thought it'd be fun to mention that. Go to buyraycon.com/TroyOboyo to get up to 20% off your order site-wide, including all headphones 20% off. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and thanks to my patrons and my channel members who help make this channel possible for just $1 a month. I hate when Kryptonite is disgustingly overpowered. Have it hurt him and make him vulnerable to it, but the idea that it begins to faint by even the sight of it always annoyed me. I agree with this to an extent. Kryptonite has always been kind of a crux for a long time, and I think the quality of a Superman story, you can tell the quality of a Superman story based on how they use Kryptonite. If it is just a catch-all, like this is the only way we know how to make any conflict arise with the character, then I think that that's a failure of the storytellers. I do think it's an interesting thing that exists, right? I don't want to see it get removed or him lose that weakness to it by any means. My favorite version of it was in Superman Smashes the Klan by Gene Luen Yang and Gurihiru. It was like a very interesting like representation of his own fears of being an alien, and it was visualized in like he would look at his hand and it became a gross, scary alien hand, and he got nauseous from it. I think that's my favorite part. It wasn't just like he sees it and he starts dying immediately because it just makes him he's dying. But I think it was cool how it made him nauseous. It was more so he felt like he had to throw up. I never like when green kryptonite is used as like kryptonite's near me, so I don't even have my powers. If you have kryptonite in a story, at the very least, you should do this sort of like, oh, I'm pushing through the pain, I'm pushing through the weakness, and like overcoming that, because I think that's what all the best Superman stories are about, is like the overcoming of those odds and those obstacles. And what better obstacle than a magic rock that when you see it makes you physically in pain, right? Superman the movie isn't the gold standard for comic book movies and has too many faults to really appreciate the film. I don't agree with this. This might be my own personal bias and nostalgia showing and all that. Superman 78 is the blueprint. And even Kevin Feige has said this. Superman 78 is literally the blueprint for how they make superhero movies. You know, you can argue all day about whether or not it's a great Superman movie, right? I think it is, especially at the time in a pre-crisis era, which is so fascinating. I mean, the main villain the main plot is a real estate scam. That's fun. That's great. That's so classic Lex Luthor. I love that. I definitely think that people, when they talk about other superhero movies and Superman movies, they compare it to it a lot, for sure. And it is kind of a standard that is now almost too high to top. But at the same time, I think it's still a great movie. Yes, it's dated. It's from 1978, right? That's almost 50 years old. That's crazy. And it's a very dated movie. There's a lot of aspects to it that like are just kind of like weird 70s quirks, you know, especially a big 70s blockbuster. I don't think you have to like the movie as a movie, but I do think it's very important to look at it culturally about what it represents and kind of understand the like how we got there and how we got to hear from that movie. You know what I'm saying? I refuse to buy or watch anything to do with Superman without his outside undies on. I kind of agree. I'm not to the extreme of like, oh, I won't watch it, you know, because like Superman and Lois didn't have the trunks, and I love that show. I think especially kind of in a post-2010s era where everything was getting rid of the trunks and everything was trying to make Superman cool, quote unquote cool, make him edgy, make him, you know, we're not going to do the trunks because the trunks are too silly. I think now anything that has trunks, like My Adventures with Superman or the James Gunn movie, it shows that the people making the movie give a shit and that they like the character. Because I think, and you don't have to like the Trunks. You don't have to like the Trunks. I'm not saying you have to like the Trunks. I think the Trunks are a very interesting visual to showcase what priorities an adaptation has. They're not going to try to injustice him. They're not going to try to make him edgy and cool and ignore what makes him interesting, right? They're willing to accept the comic bookiness. Here's the thing. It doesn't make it any better or any worse, but going into a piece of media or going into a show or movie or an adaptation or anything and seeing the Trunks, you're already off to a good start for me. I'm already like, okay, all right, you're selling me here. I'm interested, you know. That's kind of where I stand on it. There were so many takes about the Trunks. Oh my god, it's such a hot topic. All right, here's a big one. DC needs to age revert Jon Kent. I used to agree with this back when it happened, back when the first aging up of Jon Kent. I'm assuming they're talking Jon Kent, Superman's son. I'm realizing they could mean Pa Kent, make him a 19-year-old. But back when Jon Kent first got aged up during the Bendis era, I was very frustrated with it because I loved like 12-year-old Jon Kent and that sort of father-son dynamic of the Rebirth Tomasi Gleason era. And I loved Super Sons. I loved that book and him and Damian and his relationship. And it was very frustrating, right? It felt like Bendis just joined the book, ignored everything that came before it, and just wanted to do what he wanted to do. And I think that's a bigger issue with the comics industry as a whole. A lot of writers will do that. They'll just kind of ignore what came before. And I think that the testament of a good writer is to look at what came before and see what you can do with it. And I think Bendis's run, aside from that decision, was great. I don't like to put it in a box of like it's the best thing ever or it's the worst thing ever, right? I think it's a solid middle of the road Superman book. When it comes to Jon Kent, and I'm gonna be honest here, yes, I really wish they didn't do it at the time. That was like 7 years ago though. We gotta move on. There's so many bigger issues with Jon Kent as a character now, namely the fact that DC doesn't know how to fucking use him, and so he feels like an industry plant at this point. I think the unfortunate reality is if they didn't age up him, he would be the age he is now. In theory, in 2018, if he stayed being 12 years old, or if they de-aged him immediately because of fan backlash and he aged up naturally, he'd be here. We'd be at the same point. So like, what do we want? We want to go back to 12. I don't hate the Jon character. I don't think they know how to use him very well. My biggest issue with that Jon Kent run was Jon hyped himself up a lot. He said, I'm gonna be better than my dad. I'm gonna fix the issues that he's been ignoring because I'm born here. I'm from Earth. That means that I have more of an ability to make actual change. I'm like, okay. Don't know if I agree with that last part, but you know, whatever. And so I was expecting him to be like kind of a radical Superman. And if he went really hard with it, if he was like, I'm gonna take down corporations, if he went Robin Hood with it, if he went Green Arrow with it, that would have been so much fun. If he was kind of a revolutionary that people hated, that could have been a very interesting story where Superman is the beloved one and then Superman's son is seen as too extreme, too radical. It could have been so much fun, but they didn't go that way. They didn't go that far with it, right? And it just felt like kind of nothing. Granted, Superman himself, Clark Kal should be doing that as well, right? He's the champion of the oppressed. I don't want to take that away from him, but if you're gonna have two, if you're going to try and have them both coexist, or you're gonna try and say that one is gonna do more work than the other, then that's, I think, the best way to do it. I think he should be shorter and leaner than Batman. I kind of agree. I don't think like all the time and stuff, but I think for certain adaptations, especially like a younger one, a skinny, not skinny necessarily, but a leaner, like sort of swimmer's body Superman would be really fun. I think that there is something really fun in this idea of he's the strongest man in the world. So how does he work out? Like, I know the sun makes him, the sun being in the sun, like it strengthens his muscles and shit. Whatever. But I think it could be really fun if he's like Mr. Incredible, where he has to exercise. He has to lift trains. There's only so much weight on planet Earth that can get you the resistance that you need, you know? Before all the casting came out with David and with Nicholas for Lex, I thought it would have been really fun for Dave Bautista to be Lex. Because like, I'm just picturing this massive hulking Lex Luthor and a smaller, skinnier, short 5'9" Superman. And it's kind of a David and Goliath situation. I understand like culturally what Superman represents in the sort of like peak human physicality and stuff. I think in some media or something, I want to see something that tries that. That would be really fun, at least just like as a visual. All right, here's a big scorching hot one. The Kents should be dead once he reaches adulthood. They don't add anything to Superman's stories being alive. I got like 100 comments about this. This is the biggest one. This is a very, very controversial take within the Superman community, and people will fight each other for years and years and years about this, and they feel very, very strongly about this opinion. I am in the middle of it. On one hand, I think that Clark is a character who loneliness is a big aspect of him. He, by all means, is a very lonely figure. And the Kents are kind of this like safety net for him. Having them be dead, it makes him even lonelier, right? He lost his first family with Krypton, and now he lost his second family, and now he's all alone. He has to make a new family with Lois and Jimmy and Kara and everybody, right? But on the other hand, every single fucking superhero is an orphan. The orphan main character is a trope. If you look at any YA novel, every fucking character, very rarely do they have their parents still alive. And it's not necessarily a bad thing by any means. I don't have a problem with it, but it is also fun to see kind of a you know, something subvert that a little bit. And I like the ability that the Kents give for him to kind of ground himself every once in a while. Like he's overwhelmed and he's tired and something's happening, you know, he's just being Superman is too much for him. And he's like, I gotta go home. I gotta sit. I have to be with my mom or be with my dad. I need to just talk to them and remember why I'm doing this. But I also think that Jonathan Kent, his death is really important to the character and what he represents, specifically the heart attack. We're not getting into the fucking tornado discussion today. Specifically the heart attack and what that means, and this idea that he can't save everybody and all that. I've talked about that many times before. And so I think kind of the solution is to have John die, have Pa Kent die, and keep Ma Kent around, at least for a time, at least until he reaches like adult, like 40 or something, right? Like Superman and Lois age. I get it. I get the appeal. I really do. I genuinely get it. And I'm not gonna fight anybody on this take. I think it's fun. It's it, you know? I don't know. Connor Kent's t-shirt design, while flawed, shows his growth as a character, and switching back to 90s immediately age regressed him in writing and art. I get what you're saying here, but here's a counterpoint. It's so fucking cool. 90s Superboy is the coolest character design I've ever seen in my life. He's so sick. He's so rad. He looks like Trunks. And we're having Trunks discourse. This motherfucker looks like Trunks. Doomsday is easily the best Superman villain, especially when his adaptability after death power is pushed to the extreme. Maybe this is me. Maybe I've never read a Doomsday book that I like or seen anything with Doomsday that I enjoy. I can't fucking stand the dude. To me, he is a big monster that it just was created to kill Superman, and that's it. He's like the Hulk if Hulk didn't have any interesting character elements, no horror aspects to his mythos, and no interesting dynamic between Banner and Hulk, and no commentaries on mental health, none of that. He is literally just a big guy that punches people and has spikes for hands. It just, again, maybe I need to read something that makes Doomsday an interesting character. The one thing that made Doomsday cool was Smallville season 8. I think it was season 8, where he was played by Sam Witwer. They turned him into a Jekyll and Hyde character, where during the day he was an EMT. He would show up at crime scenes and be like, oh my God, a big monster just pummeled this guy to death. What happened? Like it was such a fun dynamic, and he didn't even know he was Doomsday for most of the season. If you're gonna try to make Doomsday interesting, that's the way to do it, if you ask me. I loved the way they handled Doomsday in that season. The animated DCAU convinced a whole generation that Superman is dumb, literally. I kind of agree with this. I love the DCAU, I really do. And I love the Superman animated series, I love the Batman animated series, I love JLU. JLU is like my favorite show because Green Arrow is a big aspect of it. I think Superman, the animated series, did a solid job with everything, you know, but once they put him in a team setting, specifically with Batman, who was clearly their favorite. Superman is a smart guy. He's a genius level intellect, right? But I think because you have Batman on the team, who's someone with no powers, and his only thing really is either money, which is not interesting, or being smart, which is interesting, they really lean into the smartness for Batman. And so by proxy, that makes other characters look dumb. And sometimes they have to dumb down other characters to make the smart guy look smarter. I think a lot of people assume because he's from Kansas, he must be dumb. I'm like, that's kind of fucked up to say. That's Jesus. And so that led to like the himbo Superman concept being very popular. He's a scientist. His dad was a scientist, right? So I've never liked dumb Superman. I really hope the movie kind of like emphasizes how smart he really is. Stop making Krypton this increasingly messed up utopia with a seedy underbelly and calamitous imposing empire. I understand where you're coming from here, but I also think that the allegory for Krypton, for its destruction, is too good to pass up on. You have a character whose whole purpose, especially originally, was he was an allegory for Moses, an allegory for Jewish culture, and also he's the champion of the oppressed. And I think in an era now where we have seen how the oppressors destroy their own planet for a profit, and we are powerless against it, it writes itself, right? And it's why I think Absolute Superman is phenomenal so far. I love the allegory that they made with Krypton and making it about the working class, and classism was really the thing that destroyed the planet, and not necessarily like the core is gonna explode and nobody listens. There's something really, really interesting to make it where they ignored the scientists specifically because they were putting profits first. I'm not huge on it being like an empire though. I don't think they should go like the invincible route and make them like the Viltrumites and stuff. I think you can have someone like Zod and his army kind of be like a subsect, and you can still kind of tell interesting stories with that if you want to. Superman works best when he's kept simple and not reinventing the wheel. Edgy Superman has never been executed well and should be ignored at all costs. Boy Scout Superman is more interesting. I agree with you to an extent. Trying to reinvent the wheel of Superman does not work very well because the wheel was kind of perfect when it was created. You can add things, you can dress it up differently, but like when he was created, he was champion to the oppressed, he fought landlords and wife beaters, and all you have to do is scale up from there. And then you have a character that is timeless. And I think in terms of the Boy Scout aspect, like that terminology, it kind of depends on what you mean by Boy Scout. I call someone like Cyclops a Boy Scout. I call Scott Summers a Boy Scout, even though he very much is not. But really he is a revolutionary and he's very radical. And a lot of his stories are about that. And they're also about him cheating on his wife, but a lot of his stories are about being radical. The concept of a Boy Scout is not necessarily like rule following. It's about having such a strong moral compass and never straying from that, and having a genuine, hopeful, optimistic of what the world can be. I think you can still be optimistic while still having a bit of edge to you. And one of my favorite modern Superman stories, not necessarily, I don't even know if you would call this modern anymore, but it was New 52 Action Comics by Grant Morrison with art by Rags Morales. That leaned pretty heavily into the champion of the oppressed aspect. That is edgy Superman that I want to see. I don't want to see Superman like beating people up, throwing people through walls, lasering them in the face and being evil. No, I don't give a shit about that. Again, absolute Superman. That's an edgy Superman that is still a Boy Scout. He's still a good person, still a good person at heart, has a strong moral belief and a strong pursuit of justice, of what the world should be, and has an optimistic view of what the world should be, but he knows he's gonna have to smash some heads to get there. All-Star Superman is pretty overrated. I really disagree with this. I'm sorry. I think it's difficult. Like what the concept of what is overrated, what is underrated, right? You could say that Spider-Man 2 is an underrated masterpiece. What the fuck are you talking about? But I can't argue with you on that. Of course it's gonna feel overrated because it's the one that everybody loves. It's the one that everybody recommends all the time. It is held up to a pedestal, same in a similar vein to like Christopher Reeve Superman. The more I look into this book, the more I research about how it was made and the process behind it and what Grant was going through at the time, the more and more I just fall more in love with it, The fact that the cover is a real life story about a real person that Grant themselves met. The guy was wearing a Superman costume and represented everything that Grant was trying to convey with Superman. It was like magic. To me, it's a book that keeps giving me something. Every time I read it, I get something new out of it. Is it my favorite Superman book? Probably not. That might go to Smashes the Clan or Secret Identity. I can't go off too much on All-Star. I love All-Star so much. If you want to hear me talk more about All-Star, I did a podcast with my friend Eric of the Geeksplain podcast. That's a conversation. Like anything can be overrated, right? I could say that water is overrated. Water is overrated. I could just drink Baja Blast the rest of my life, and I would. Superman's freeze breath is cooler, no pun intended, than his heat vision, and it should be used more. I agree, actually. I think that the heat vision is used a lot because it's flashy, like literally flashy. It's big lasers coming out of his eyes, even though it's not lasers. He looks at something and it heats up. It's not like actually like a beam, whatever. It's big glowing red eyes and it looks so sick for your cool masculine Superman. And then blowing isn't as cool, I guess. Cyborg Superman is a terrible character in both concept and execution. I don't have a strong opinion about Cyborg Superman as a guy, but I just want to talk about this. I fucking love that it's his origin. I love it so much. For those who don't know, it is a parody of the Fantastic Four, where him, his wife's brother, and his best friend, they all went up to space and they got horrible radiation poisoning and died. It's just a Fantastic Four joke. That's all it is. And it's so funny. I don't really give a shit about Cyborg Superman as a guy, like, whatever. But every time I see him, I'm like, hey, that's technically Reed Richards. But all right. We've been talking a lot about other people's hot takes. Let me end it off here with my biggest hot take. I do not like the black suit. The Superman black suit, to me, I've never liked. I didn't like it in the comics. I didn't like it in the Snyder Cut. I don't like it when it shows up in things. I don't like action figures of it. People think it's the symbiote. People treat it like it's the symbiote, like it's this cool story thread that really has a lot of meaning. It doesn't. It's just a different costume that absorbs the sunlight more. I don't fucking care. It feels like trying to make him Batman by giving him a black suit to make him cool, and it just seems lazy. I think the best it's ever looked, and this is going to sound crazy, in Fortnite, hang on. In Fortnite, use creator code TroyBoy17 in Fortnite. But so what you can do is you can do black suit Superman, and then you can make the cape red. That looks sick. Black suit Superman with red cape, rad. Love that. Regular black suit Superman, either with a black cape or no cape, I'm bored. I'm sorry. Lame. The best part about Black Suit Superman is the mullet. Love the mullet. The mullet's so cool. But with that said, thank you for watching. Let me know what your hot takes about Superman are and if you enjoyed this type of video. But if you liked this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Thank you so much to all the spectacular fanboys on my Patreon, including Caleb Hatchett, Cypher Offline, Jade Skylar, and Kobe, who just joined this month. If you like this sort of unscripted thing, I've been doing exclusive videos for my members, which are in a sort of similar unscripted vibe, including a full unedited extended version of this video. This has been TroyBoy17 coming at you live. Be responsible, and I'll see you around.